right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final genealogy class for 2023. Tonight's topic is using vital records to research your ancestors. Okay, before we get going, we just have a couple things to cover. We acknowledge that the Boston Public Library Central Library stands on land that was once a water-based ecosystem, providing sustenance for the indigenous Massachusetts people, and is a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. We are committed to land acknowledgements for all locations at which we operate. We reaffirm this commitment to set the context for our planning, deliberations, and public engagement will take place from the spirit of welcome and respect, found in our motto, free to all. So for those of you who don't know me, if this is your first time, welcome. I am Jessie Wheeler. I am the genealogy specialist here at the BPL. I work in the Research Services Department at the Central Library in Copley Square. So a couple more notes before we get to the main part of the presentation. I'm putting in a link to the handout in the chat. In case anyone didn't get it in the emails before, the chat box is open, so feel free to say hello to each other or whatever you want to do. Let us know where you're coming from. And if you have any questions for me, please feel free to put them in the chat box. There will be plenty of time for questions after my presentation. And if you're having any technical issues, please let me know. This class is being recorded, and everyone who is registered for the class will be getting a link to the recording once it's ready, which will hopefully be this week. But our AV people are very, very busy, so you might have to wait a little while, but it will be eventually up there. Okay, let me see. So we will also be getting a follow-up email from me tomorrow evening with a link to this presentation, the slides, so the handout and the chat transcript. So you don't have to worry if you missed something. You will be able to catch it again, and you don't have to worry about writing a whole bunch of stuff down unless you want to. That's entirely up to you. So today, as I said, we're covering vital records. So first things what we're going to cover is what are vital records. Then we're going to go over good things to know. We're going to talk about where records are. We're going to talk about finding records in Massachusetts. We will be covering other parts of the country because I know we sometimes have folks here from other places. Then we're going to talk about some other resources. First of all, what are vital records? Vital records are government-produced records that document births, marriages, and deaths. So these are really useful starting points for those of you who are just starting your family history research, because they can contain a lot of really good basic information, and this can include where a person lived, what their job was, and if you're lucky, you might get information about the person's parents, their spouse, or their children. So they can be really good places to find more information to go and track down even more records. So just a few things to know. So in Massachusetts, we're kind of spoiled as far as vital records go because they are, with very, very few exceptions, vital records are considered public information and anyone can request anyone else's record. Their only restrictions are in the cases of there's some years, in the case of adopted individuals where there are still restricted access, but most records can be requested by anyone. This is not the case in other states, as we will get into in a little bit. So, as I said, it's going to vary from state to state. Other states are going to have different laws regarding who can access these records, and some places will have a moratorium, a time period where you can't request it, so they'll usually like a few decades or so, or sometime after a person has died. So in that case, there's other sources of information where you can find similar information. It's not going to be exactly the same, but we're going to talk about that a little later. Things like obituaries, baptism records, if the person was part of a religion where baptism was practiced, particularly the Catholic Church, some of those can contain some of the same information as vital records. They are not vital records. Vital records are government records. So there are different types of records, but they can also still be useful. And we're going to go into those a little bit later. Okay, so now we're going to go into where the records are. So I'm going to sound like a broken record, but a lot of it It depends. So in Massachusetts, again, we are focusing on Massachusetts because those are the laws that I know, because this is where I work. So that's what I know. So for Massachusetts, before 1841, you'll need to contact the city or town of occurrence. So if you're talking about Boston, anything from 1630 to the present will be at the Registry Division in our beautiful City Hall. So just one thing to keep in mind for the colonial era, yes, there are some records, like for 1630 and into the 1700s, but it's not as complete as it would be later on. So you can always give it a shot if you're looking for someone who had an event occur during the 17th or 18th centuries, but just don't hold your breath. So outside of Boston, for other cities and towns in Massachusetts, you would contact the town or the city clerk's office. In Massachusetts, they're the ones responsible for maintaining vital records for their municipality. So now we're going to cover, so from 1841 to 1930, you could check again with the city or town of occurrence or the Massachusetts State Archives. They will have that period of records. And then from 1931 to present, it'll be the city or town of occurrence. And you could also check with the Massachusetts Registry of Vital Records and Statistics. There is an ongoing project. The state archives will periodically transfer records. They transfer records back and forth. So right now, the archive says 1930. So the Vital Records Office will occasionally, as time passes, send more and more records to the state archives. So we're going to go into why that's useful in a little bit. So as I said, for other states, the procedures are going to be different. I always recommend this, even for not just for vital records, but for any type of genealogical research. Try contacting the local or state library where the person you're researching lived, because chances are the librarians are going to have a better idea of what they can get, how it works, or they can tell you where things are if they don't have it themselves, or they will know who does know. So I always strongly recommend contacting a library or the place that you're researching. Librarians are very helpful. I know I'm biased, but I believe it's true. So just as an example, so other states, you're going to find in a lot of instances, their vital records are handled by the Department of Health. This is true for Maine and Rhode Island, Vermont, California, New Jersey, and New York. A lot of the Department of Health are responsible for maintaining vital records. And in Connecticut, they have their own state vital records office. New Hampshire, they have a vital records administration. So it is going to be different. It's going to be called something different or run by a different department, depending on where you're looking at. But by and large, a lot of them will be done by the Department of Health. So one thing I will say, as I said before, we're kind of spoiled here in Massachusetts. New York State is incredibly tricky. And I know this also because I have ancestors who lived in New York State. It was not required in New York State to record vital records until the 1890s. So if you're researching prior to that time, there's a chance there might be something, but it wasn't a legal requirement. So there's not a lot before 1890. Even then, it can be kind of tricky. New York City has its whole own system for this, and the rest of the state has a different system. So New York is a little bit complicated as far as that goes. So for Massachusetts, we're going to talk about that a little bit. This is a picture of the Massachusetts Archives. That's out on Columbia Point in Dorchester near the JFK Library, for those of you who are familiar with the area. So Massachusetts, if you know where the event occurred, if you know the name of the city or town, the easiest thing to do would be to contact the town or city clerk's office. In most cases, it's going to be faster and cheaper than going to a state agency like the archives or the vital records office. The procedure is going to be different depending on where you are, but for the most part, generally, there'll be a form you have to fill out, and there's going to be a fee you have to pay. The amount of the fees will vary, but it's still, I can tell you from personal experience, it's going to be much easier to go that route if you know where it happened rather than trying to go through a state agency. So if you're looking for where that is, the easiest thing to do is do a Google search. Google can be useful. So you could just type in the name of the town or city followed by clerk or clerk's office, or you could try searching for the name of the town or city and vital records. So we're going to show a couple of examples here. So for instance, if you have if you're looking for someone who is associated with Framingham, you can do a search for Framingham clerk's office, and that's going to be the first result that comes up. So you don't want to put in town or city before that, because I don't know which every municipality, if it's a town or a city in Massachusetts, there's hundreds of towns and cities in Massachusetts. I don't know what they all are unless you know for a fact that it's a city or a town, the place you're looking for. I would just leave off city or town. But in any case, there we go. This is the right one. So we're going to pop one over to their website. So there we go. Oh, come on now. There we are. Okay, so there'll usually be someplace, should be fairly obvious. It might be called something different. They might just call them vital records, or in this case, they're calling them birth, marriage, and death certificates. So you click on that link and then it'll tell you how to do it. So in this case, you mail your request, or you could go to the office, and this will, so Framingham, for instance, charges $15 per certified copy for these records. So, and this is pretty typical of most places in Massachusetts. You can mail in your request, or you can go in and there'll just be a small fee, and there's just in this case, they don't have a form to fill out. You can just write in with a request. Some places will also provide a form that they would like you to use. So one important note, so if you're looking for a town or city that has a common name that might be another state, like for instance, Springfield is the best example, you definitely want to add Massachusetts. Otherwise, you might get Springfield, Illinois, or any other random Springfield that happens to be searched a lot on Google. So there you go. You want to make sure you put in Massachusetts. If you leave Massachusetts out, so in this case, because we're in Massachusetts, you're going to see Massachusetts will come to the top, but if you scroll down, you'll see Illinois will show up, and a bunch of other states are going to show up, and there's Vermont as well. So definitely make sure, if you think there's a common name, you're going to want to put it in there, so make sure you get the right place. So when you don't know the town or city that it happened in, you will need to go to a state agency for the state archives. They do take requests by mail, email, and in person, and copies cost $3 each. So you could also, if you're not sure of the date, that might cost a little bit more because that requires them to do some research. You could also go in there. I believe they've reopened after their facilities issues last year, so you can go in and do your own research. We can take a look at that there. Okay, so they've recently changed this around a little bit. So they also have on their website, you can search online, you can search their indexes from 1841 to 1910, but if you already have a good idea of what you want, you would just need to click on this link here, application for certified vital records. And we'll open up this form for you. There we go. So this is something you can fill it out online, and then you can print it out or send it in. You just fill out all the information and you send it into them, and if they're able to find it, they will send it out to you. So they're actually pretty reasonably priced. However, if you're looking at a different time period and you have to go through the Registry of Vital Records and Statistics, that's going to cost you a little more. So they also do take requests online, by mail, on the phone, and in person. However, their fees are a little bit steeper. They will charge you $20 to $62.50, which depends on the type of request. So the difference depends on how many copies you want, what kind of research they have to do, if they have to do a bunch of research, if you're not sure of the time and the place. It's going to be very, very different depending on what you're looking to do. So I would strongly recommend, if you know where and when the thing happened, don't go through the vital records if you can help it, because it does cost a lot more. So for some other resources, these wouldn't be considered official government records, but there are a few other places where you can get information like birth, death, and marriage. This right here is one thing we're going to talk about. This is a page from published vital records. So the Massachusetts Archives, which I don't know if you can tell, I really, really like them over there. They're wonderful people. They have digital records that they have put online that cover from 1841, and we were just over there. Okay, so they have records covering from 1841 to 1930. This is fairly recent that they've had this, so it's still a little wonky, the search function. So they have a bunch of different random record sets. So let's say we want to try this one. So what this will take you into is familysearch.org. This is the portal that they use. They uploaded on there. It is free. You do have to register for an account. It is 100% free, but you do have to register. So in order to use it. So you can see here. These are all the records that they have for Massachusetts, and a lot of them have been digitized. I think I clicked on the wrong one there. So anyway, so if this is something you want to use, they do have a lot of stuff available online. So you don't necessarily have to go there. It's not going to be a certified copy. So if you do need a certified copy for something, you do need to go to them. But if you're just looking to have the information, this is definitely an option. So Family Search also has some records that come from other places. It's not just stuff from the state archives. They have a vast array of things covering Massachusetts. There we go. So they also have, in addition to vital records, they will have some town clerk and town records. So these aren't going to be birth, death, and marriage records, but there's still other records that might have information about your ancestors. So you could definitely take a look through there and see what they have. So they also have, you can also browse if you want to. So we're going to click on that just so you all can see what it looks like. And so we're going to sign in here. Oh, okay. Okay. So if you did want to look, so if you just want to browse through, if you're not sure that time period, if you just wanted to see what things looked like, you can pick a county here, and we're going to pick my hometown here. Okay, so let's do this one. We're going to click on deaths. See if we can make this window a little bit bigger. There we go. Let's do full screen. Okay, well, that's not much better. There we go. Okay, so let's click on, so if you click on this little button right here, you'll be able to see the ledger. So now let's open this one. Okay, so, and this is the image of the register. So these are the records that they have at the Vital Records Office and the State Archives. It's everything written down in ledger books. A lot of it is handwritten, as you can see. Sometimes the handwriting is a little hard. This actually, believe it or not, is not too bad. I've seen much worse handwriting and very messy copying. So this will tell you the name, if in the case of a death record here, it'll give you the name of the deceased, their age. It might tell you what they died of. In some cases, you might have to look online to see what it means. It'll tell you where they lived, it'll tell you where they died, it'll tell you where they were born, and it'll tell you maybe their parents' names, and sometimes it'll actually tell you where they were buried. So I can tell you in Pittsfield, there's only 2 cemeteries. There's a Catholic cemetery and a city cemetery, so they're going to be buried in one of those 2 places. Pittsfield is not a very big town. Okay, let's see, there we go. Okay, so that's just a little sample of what you can find on Family Search and through the state archives. So there are other ways to get access to online records for Massachusetts and for other states. So at the Boston Public Library, we do have available for in-library use only 2 databases that can be useful for this. So there's Ancestry Library Edition, which if you've been doing genealogy research for any length of time, you're probably familiar with. So we're gonna just take a look at that here. It is in library use only at this time. It was available remotely during lockdown, but that stopped a while ago. But this is something you want to look at here. So you go to their front page and you get in. So it's this category right here. So you can just go ahead and click on search now. And it's going to be a little slow for me this evening. Okay, so let's say I want to find my great grandfather's record. So let's type in his name. And I know he was born in Pittsfield. I'm not 100% sure of, I'm not 100% sure of the year. I'm just going to pop in Pittsfield and see what comes up. All right. So here we go. So, not sure who all these people are. Here we go. Okay, so I can tell you this is my grandfather. His middle name was Lawrence. I'm not sure why that's listed there. Okay. I am probably related to all these people. So this death record. So this is, I believe this is my great great uncle. Or no, this is just my this is one of my grandmother's brothers right here, my great uncle Jimmy. And then there's other people here. So, let me see if we can, okay. So then you click on the record that you're looking for. Not sure if this is the one I'm looking for, but all right, here we go. Okay, and then you can click on the image and take a look at the information in here. So, let's see, come on now. All right, so this is another one. You can see it's pretty much the same as the other one. This is a birth record. It's a ledger. It's all handwritten. See if I can find Archie. Okay, there we go. So this is Lawrence Henry Archie. So there we go. So again, it'll tell you where they were born. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this is a mistranscription. Her last name wasn't Tatro. I'm not sure what they were trying to do there, but yeah, this is my great grandfather here, and this is one of my great uncles. This is one of my grandmother's brothers. I remember there was one of 13 children, so she had a lot of siblings. So this will tell you where the father was born, where the mother was born, and also this column up here. And the columns up top here will tell you what it is. And so in this case, it'll tell you the date it was recorded. So there isn't going to be much lag time usually, but sometimes for various reasons, there's going to be a different date. But here we go. So this is my great uncle, Lawrence Archie. So, and you can also find these some similar records on American ancestors. This one you can only use in the central library. You can't access it anywhere else. The search function looks a little different. So we're gonna just go to the main search page. Okay. So basically in this case, let's see if I can find my great uncle again here. I forgot that my great grandfather was born in New York State, so that's why we couldn't find him in there because those records are not online. Okay, let's try to look for Lawrence. So we know he was born in Pittsfield. And we're going to do a search here. And there we go. This is going to be the same record that we found in Ancestry. I believe, and if it will load for us. Yep, it's the same exact record. You can find in Ancestry. However, I will say they tend to have better quality images than Ancestry.com. So it's usually a little easier to read if you use American Ancestors or Family Search. They do tend to just have better images. Okay, so just for general places online, there are lots of free resources where you can get information like that. I don't know if you noticed there was a link to Find a Grave. on there. Find a grave is pretty useful. So these here are focused more, they're focused on cemeteries. So we're gonna look at, I think, yeah, we have time to look at a couple of these. So Find a Grave is probably the one that most people know. It is the most well-known. Find a Grave started out mostly just collecting photographs. So it's not quite as vigorous here, but they are going to have more information. It is, however, based on user submissions. So you need to take everything with a grain of salt. So we're going to look up my great-grandfather. Again, so let's see, again, I'm not really sure what year he died, so I'm going to put in Pittsfield because I know that's where he's buried. There we go, Henry Lawrence. There we go. So if you're lucky, someone will have taken a picture of the headstone, and there you can see there's Henry. And yeah, I can't really make it. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Okay, they don't like it when I do. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, that didn't quite work as well as I thought it would. Okay. So the photos can be a little small sometimes, but if you can read that, you can see here. So you have Henry, and he was married twice. His first wife predeceased him by quite some time, and so he remarried. That's why my grandmother had so many siblings, because they both had like 6 or 7 kids each. So they come from a very large family. So you can see here, so this will give you information if you didn't know before. This will give you information about possibly his spouse or spouses in this case, and maybe his siblings and children. So you can see here, yeah, I am related to all of these people. If you happen to run across someone with a last name Archie who's from Berkshire County, I am probably related to them. So this can be a good thing, but again, this is based on user information, so I would just use this as a starting point. You do want to back up all the information you find on these, particularly if it's not familiar to you. So interment.net and Billion Graves are pretty much the same. However, they do have different focuses. Interment.net does focus more on text-based things. They'll have transcripts, and and they have contributions from genealogists and cemetery and people who are in charge of cemeteries. So there's going to be a fair amount of overlap between all of them, but I think it's useful to look at all of them if you're having trouble. Let's take a look at Billion Graves. There you go. So their search function is a little simpler, but let's see. So I'm going to try again. All right. Let's pop in Henry Archie and see what comes up. Okay, so now the tricky part with them is you do have to go into the search page here to refine it. It's not quite obvious how to find the advanced search. So you have to go in to do a basic search, then you can click on refine. So now we're going to limit it to United States and go down to Massachusetts and then Berkshire County, and then click on that. So their search isn't quite as good as Find a Grave, but it's still pretty cool because they will have, it tends to be a little bit more reliable information. Righty. Let's see. All right, so looking beyond cemeteries, again, most of what you're going to find here online will be death records. I'm not quite sure why that is. Death records just seem to be more widely available than birth or marriage for some reason. So if you are looking just for general vital records, the Centers for Disease Control, National Center for Health Statistics, keeps up a website of where to contact vital records for each state. And if it will cooperate with me, there we go. There you go. So it's an alphabetical order by state, and it will link to, and there's also U.S. territories are in here, so you can see Guam, and there's also a link to information of where to find foreign births for United States citizens. So let's say we want to look for Oregon. It'll get us to information there. It'll have information about fees and all that. Keep in mind, though, this is a federal government website, so information might not be 100% accurate if things changed. As you can see here, this was last updated in 2018, so things might have changed, but this will at least give you an idea of where you should go, and there will be links. So you can see here, it's the Oregon Health Authority is the office that handles it in Oregon. Okay, and there's a couple of websites that are useful. So there's another government website, U.S. citizen deaths overseas. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's information about U.S. citizens who died while abroad, either because they were in the military or they were traveling or they worked overseas. This will tell you how you can get that information. So I don't know why they don't have anything over here. It's not very well formatted. So you can see here how to find information here about various categories. Okay, so believe it or not, you can also get this information in books. So as I think Teresa mentioned in the chat, we have published books with vital records for mainly Massachusetts. Well, they are called the tan books because they are tan. The covers are tan. It's not a very appealing shade, but that's what we have. So these are going to be in Bates Hall, which is on the second floor of the library in Copley Square. They are on the open shelf, so you don't have to come talk to us if you don't want to. I'd love to talk to you though, but you can just go in and grab those yourself if you want to look at them. So you can see a listing in the catalog of what we have here. Our collection does primarily focus on Massachusetts, but we do have some random collections of vital records from other places. So you can see here the first result is a cemetery in Seneca County, New York. Well, you can see here it is mostly Massachusetts, but we do have some other things. So it's definitely worth, if you have a place you're looking for just for the heck of it, pop in vital records and the name of the place and we might have something. Another really cool resource we have is the Boston Record Commissioner's reports. So these are based on publications that were put together by the Office of the Record Commissioner. This was established in 1875 to basically compile as well as they could all birth, death, and marriage records in Boston before 1849. So the results of their record gathering was published in the later 19th century. And all of these books have been digitized and are online. So they didn't just do birth, death, and marriage records. They also did a lot of other things. So they have tax lists, town records. They have selectmen's records, which get really, really interesting the closer you get to the Revolutionary War. They also have birth records. So right here, we're going to click on Boston births. And if you click on one of these links, it'll take you to archive.org, which is a free website. So you'll be able to look at it online here. And this one I can make bigger. There you go. Okay, so it is organized in chronological order. And then it is in alphabetical order by last name, but they put the last name at the end of each line and not at the beginning. So it's a little tricky finding things, but this is what they have. This is all gathered primarily from churches that were around at the time. That's one of my favorite resources that I like. We also randomly have an index of births in the city of Boston for 1916. So if you happen to be researching someone who was born in Boston in 1916, we have got you covered. It is also available online. It has been digitized. If this will load for me, go. Okay. So I'm not sure why they did this one report. It's a little bit of a mystery to me, but it's pretty simply organized. It's just alphabetical by last name. It gives you the child's name, the parents' names, and the birth date. And that little number here is, I believe, the number of the certificate. So if you were looking for that, you could try giving them that number. So you can see here, you see how the number, let's say January 14th is number 523. But if you go into October, it's it's 5 digits. So this is just straight number order. So that's their certificate number. Not sure why we just have 1916 if there weren't more published. I'm going to need one of these days, I will ask our government documents librarian about that. Another excellent resource that some of you may have already used to find things like obituaries are newspapers. In newspapers, you can find birth announcements, engagement and wedding announcements, as well as obituaries. I've done those. Some of you may have been to my newspaper research class recently that I talked more about other things you can find, but these are also really good things you can find. So I'm not going to go too much about it because I did do a whole class on this, but can find these things in there. It does depend on the time period. Birth announcements and engagement and wedding announcements weren't very common before, the early 20th century. They were around, but not too much. So if you're looking for someone from the colonial area, you're not going to probably find a birth or engagement or wedding announcement. You might find a death notice, which would just basically be the person's name and the day they died, and that would be it. Maybe if you're lucky, you get an occupation or possibly how they died if they thought it was interesting. But in most cases, older newspapers aren't going to have much. But once you get into the 20th century, there's going to be tons of things like this. So it can be pretty useful. I put a link in our guide here, and this will also be in your handout if you want to learn more about that. We have a whole guide about using newspapers at the BPL. So that'll tell you what we have, how to access it, and how to access things from other places. We will also have a section of our genealogy research guide all about how to find obituaries. So there's lots more information. And there we go. If this will show up for me, there we go. So this will tell you all about how to find an obituary. You could also come to my class on newspapers the next time I offer it, which will hopefully be next year. So another good resource would be court records. So this includes divorce records. So that would be held in Massachusetts by probate and family courts. So these can be a little tricky to find. You will need to know the docket number as well as the court that handled the divorce. So those are things that you can look up at the Registry of Vital Records and Statistics. So it's the same place where you would go for a marriage record. You can get information about how to get a divorce record if that's something you want to look for. So if you just click on over to their website, you can find more information about how to get that record. It'll tell you how to find the docket number and then where you go to request it. See here, because you need to fill out a form, and then they will help you figure out the information that you need. In addition to that, there will be probate records. So these are things like wills and things related to wills, like any type of document related to a person's estate. Those can be good sources of information. It could tell you if the person's children were still alive. It could tell you who their children were, maybe where they lived, if they were married, the names of their spouses, and some other really cool things. Some of these have been digitized. There are some wills and things like that on American Ancestors and Ancestry.com. So it's not a huge range of things. So if you don't find it in there, you would need to request it at the probate court, which is a little easier than getting divorce records. So again, you would need to know where it happened. So in Massachusetts, you would go to your county's probate and family court. So they have a listing of all of the locations for the probates and family courts in Massachusetts. So you can figure out where you need to go to. And the state will also, there's also information on the state's website about how to find a will. If you want to get a copy of that, it'll go over what you need to do, the forms and the fees and all that. There's always going to be a fee. And they have a separate page for information about historic records. So that's going to be a little different than getting more current records. For current records, you'll need the docket number, the name of the attorney handling it, and all sorts of things. But for historic records, it's a little different. So it'll tell you where you can find it. So how these things are organized have changed over time. So that's why they have two different sections. They are still indexed by county. We do have indexes here at the BPL for a few counties in Massachusetts. So you can also find docket numbers that way. That'll be in our indexes. And the last place we can go to get that, excuse me, would be church records. So this is particularly useful for the Catholic Church, but other denominations will have information. So you can find information about baptisms, births, marriages and deaths, burials, all sorts of things you can find out. In the case of birth records, you'll find the names of the parents, hopefully. And if you find a burial record, it might tell you where and when and how they died and various other information. We're not going to go too much into that because we do have a whole nother guide about this, and I have also taught a class on that. So here, so you can find all the information about what kinds of records are available and how to get them. A lot of records have been published. So for instance, you have here, let's see, so Old North, they have a whole history that's been published that might mention things. Some churches will have whole, transcriptions of their list of members, for instance, Old South. So that'll tell you, if you know, that'll help you figure out what church your ancestor might have gone to. Sometimes their complete records will be published. That can also be handy. So this is just for Boston, but if you have any place where there are really old churches, it's entirely possible that there was at some point in time a history published or a book of records published for them. This would be true pretty much anywhere you go in the US, so it's always worth a shot. Just maybe pop it into Google and see what comes up, because a lot of these have been digitized. You can see here there's links to a lot of them online. I'm going to click at this one. This is for Brattle Square. It's me. Okay, so this is not a great copy because it's a copy of a microfilm, which was a copy of a book that you can see was in kind of sorry shape when they filmed it. Let's skip ahead a bit. So there you go. So this page is our baptisms. So you can see here it'll have the name of the child, the parents' names, and the date of the event. So this was published by the church. So church records can be very useful. Right, so that is the end of my presentation. So you can feel free to pop your question into the chat. We have plenty of time this evening. So I see there are a couple of questions in there already. Let's see. So Amy says, sometimes when I am doing research on a site like Ancestry, it gives me the index or record number for the birth or marriage record. If I have that information, can I search this Massachusetts State Archive for the actual record? Yes, you can. So that's actually great. If you have the number, you can actually just contact them saying this is the number of the record I need, and make sure you tell them the year, and they should be able to get that for you. So that is really helpful information if you're able to find that. So I will say online, they're not going to tend to be available past 1915, but for your time period, they should all be in there. Sometimes if you're not finding it, another thing I forgot to mention, sometimes birth records will be registered in more than one place. It'll be registered in the place where it happened, but if they lived somewhere else, it'll be registered there as well. And if they had a connection to another place, then it might be registered there as well. So for instance, say you were born in Boston, but you live in Cambridge, but your parents were from Quincy. So it's theoretically possible that your birth would be registered in Boston, Cambridge, and Quincy. So that's something else to keep in mind if you're having trouble finding something. That's why I generally, when I have someone's asking me to help them find something, I'll just do Massachusetts. Because that way you get everyone and you can, kind of narrow it down by the names of the parents. But if you have a record number, you should be able to find that at the state archive. Okay, so Diane's asking, did you say that you in-house use ancestry resources includes information from other states? I'm interested in New York. Yes, it does. So American Ancestors does focus on New England, but they do have other states. Ancestry.com actually has records from all over the world. But as I said, New York State is very, very tricky. I did mention they didn't require records until the 1890s. And even then, New York is just really not great about making these records publicly accessible. So if you're looking for New York, it's very, very limited as to what's available online. If you know what town or city you're looking for in New York, you're probably better off contacting the library there and seeing what hopefully they will know what is available and how you might be able to get it. Like I said, New York is very, very tricky. There's been lawsuits about releasing this information. For some reason, they don't like to release this information. I'm not quite sure why, but then we're kind of spoiled in Massachusetts because we have so much. So other states can be a little bit more restrictive. But yes, Ancestry and American Ancestors do have other states. So so Kathleen was relating, did you say that New York City records are mostly not online? Yes. So you're looking for New York City. Let's go X out of here. Okay. I will just show you what the deal is here. So New York City vital records. So that's yeah. So most of these are not going to be online. Like I said, in New York City, they don't like to put things online. So you would have to, so for New York City, if you're looking for a birth or death record, you have to order through Vital Check. That is the most popular website that a lot of government agencies use to distribute these things. So you would have to order it there. There's very, very limited amounts of things online. And it's just really annoying. I've tried to do it before and it's very, very hard. I don't know. Like I said, we're spoiled. We really are spoiled in Massachusetts. Marriage records, they put those in a separate category. That's something that you're looking for. So yeah, so those are run by a completely different department. It's for the city clerk. They have a marriage bureau. Death and birth records are through the health department. So most places will have all three types of records available in the same grouping. Otherwise, this one they've decided to separate them out. So they do have a different timestamp. So again, you have to write away for them for the most part. It's really they're just, I don't know what their deal is there. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, so Geraldine's asking, has there been a historic difference in how Massachusetts, Boston recorded out of wedlock births? So I actually don't know off the top of my head. I haven't really had folks ask for that before. I have to imagine there probably was. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but let me see. Nope, that's not what we're looking for. Help if I remember how to spell. Okay. Okay, so let's see what Family Search says. I think they would have still been recorded, and I believe what it would have said would be father unknown or something like that. So in cases like that, you would be able to get the index, but depending on the time period, you might not be able to get the whole record. Oh, here we go. So this is something that's also keeps changing. So I think they should be in there, but I don't know. That's one of those records that can be a little restricted, like adoptions. That's one of the few categories where they're restricted. I don't know about Boston specifically, but I believe in most cases in Massachusetts, they would just put father unknown. All right, and Diana's asking, do you know if Brooklyn's record's online? I don't actually know that. So let's see. Vital records. Okay, right. Online. Again, they fall in the whole New York State thing where New York State doesn't like to put things online. So, excuse me, hair is dry in here. So I think that's another thing where you need to, it looks like there's a different office for each borough, so you need to contact the borough that you're looking for a different record. Yeah. Um, okay, so they only have since 1920. Okay, so no, they're not. Brooklyn records are not online, just like the rest of New York State. I should probably stop talking about New York State. I could go on and on and on about New York. Okay, Constance is asking, what about citizenship records and ship/passenger arrival? So those aren't considered vital records. That's another topic, but a lot of those are online. Again, it depends on the time period. So I actually had a speaker on this topic a few weeks ago, Rich Venezia, who spoke about this, how to find similar types of records, naturalization records and things like that. So a lot of that is online. I know we have some, there'll be an Ancestry.com. There are passenger listings, but let's look at the guide. So those of you who are have used this guide, we recently split it apart into 4 different guides just to make it a little less cumbersome. Okay, so let's see. So I do have a whole section on my guide for immigration and naturalization records. So I'm going to pop in a link to that right here. So you can see there is some stuff online. There's going to be more stuff for immigration. There's lots and lots of passenger lists all over the place. Naturalization records are a little tougher to come by because you do have to know quite specifically where the naturalization occurred because it's jurisdictional. They're the ones that are going to have the record. The National Archives does have some records. I think it's a little harder to come by. Most naturalization records aren't online. There are going to be some online. You're not going to find a whole, this person became a citizen for everyone. So again, it depends on the time period. There are some older records online for that though. Okay, so that's all we have for questions at the moment. So, okay, here we go. So Moshe is asking, I am a Jewish American citizen, but I was born in Egypt. How can I begin to search for my relatives from Europe? So that's a bit outside of my area of expertise. What you might want to do, we actually just had a speaker on this last week, Dr. Adina Newman, Jewish Genealogy 101. So she would actually would probably be able to help you with that. I'm not really all that good with Jewish genealogy, so that is a whole nother topic, but what I can do, let me see, stop sharing for a second. I'm going to send you a link to her handout, so that'll give you some information. Want to download Dr. Newman's handout, so that will tell you a little bit how to start, and then that'll also have her contact information, so you can get in touch with her, and she might be able to help you with that. Okay, so that is the handout for Dr. Newman. We just had her last week, actually less than a week ago, so last Thursday. You just had her, so she's really, really good. So you definitely reach out to her, take a look at the resources in her handout. That'll give you a good idea of how to start that research. Okay. All right, so it doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in. So if you think of something you want to ask later on, you can definitely share my screen again. Okay, you can feel free to send us an email to ask@epl.org. You can also call us on the phone Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. However, we are very understaffed lately, so if no one answers the phone, just leave them some message with your phone number and your question. Someone will get back to you, I promise. It's just Not a lot of people answering the phone right now. Just we've had injuries and sickness and vacations, so the phone's a little tricky right now. Okay. Oh, okay. So let's see. Richard is asking, what place would you recommend to keep your tree besides Ancestry? So Ancestry is the one I use. I know there's a whole bunch of other places. It just kind of depends on which interface you like the best, which one you want to use. For me personally, Ancestry works the best. I know FamilySearch.org also has one, and they have the advantage of being free. There's also MyHeritage has one. I think 23andMe has one. There's a bunch of different places that have one. So you really just, I would say, you like look around at all of them and see which one looks the best to you, which one would work the best for you. Okay. Okay, so all right. Okay, so in addition to the phone and email, we also have live chat Monday through Friday, 11 to 1, and that is staffed by librarians at the moment. So said it's kind of tough right now. A lot of people on vacation for the holidays, they're very, very short staffed lately. So if it takes a minute for us to get back to you, just please be patient. We will respond. If you reach out to us, you will hear back from us. It just might take a little longer this time of year. Okay, so I think it looks like that's it. So thank you all for coming. This is the final class for 2023. We will be coming back in March. We're still working out what topics I'm going to do. If you have any suggestions on topics you'd like me to cover next year, feel free to put them in this. You'll see a survey when we close out here. So feel free to put that in the survey if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to see. That goes also not just for classes, but if you have any ideas for speakers, so you can also pop those in. I'm always happy to look at your suggestions, and I have done classes and hired speakers based on your suggestions, so I do actually pay attention to what you say. So please fill out the survey, and if you have ideas, let me know. You can also send us an email. My email address is going to be in your follow-up email, so I will be sending follow-up emails to everyone tomorrow. That will have a link to the chat transcript and my slides and the handout. And once the recording has been processed and uploaded to our YouTube channel, everyone will be getting a link to that as well. So don't worry if you missed anything, if you came in a little late, or if you had to leave early, don't worry about it. You will be able to get the information. So once again, thank you everyone for coming this evening. I hope you have a good weekend, and I hope you have a very happy new year, and I will see you all in 2022. Take care.